No, we do things because we believe they're right. We'll take voyages or we'll move forward because we believe that they're necessary to be active. The worst thing in our time is ignorance, and it's apathy, and it's inaction. And especially now, because the world is changing so quick, you need to be in front of it, not behind. And so you create an idea. You create a vision that is based on something like taking a canoe 47,000 miles, going to 28 countries, 82 ports, around the only island we have. It's called Earth, in a way in which you hope in the journey that you can create awareness and better understandings and moving community towards being active. And so it inherently, for the success of the mission of the Worldwide Voyage, it requires both a strong local community connected to a global community. Otherwise, you're going to fail at your intention. I see myself as part of the responsibility to do certain pieces to make that happen.
Nainoa Thompson is a master navigator who's learned how to rely on nature and his instincts to guide the double-hulled Polynesian voyaging canoe Hokulea across vast stretches of open ocean to faraway destinations. And he's using wayfinding skills on land, navigating political and diplomatic terrain to reach with the Hokulea across the globe to raise awareness about the importance of taking care of our Earth. Nainoa Thompson next on Long Story Short.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in high definition.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Nainoa Thompson was the first Hawaiian in over 600 years to sail a canoe between Hawaii and Tahiti without the use of modern navigational tools. He has the vision to see an island thousands of miles away and the courage to leave the safety of land because he feels the long voyages connecting people will make the world a better place. That's come from a lifetime of training and community, starting here in the East Honolulu ahupuaa of Niu, also known as Niu Valley, where Thompson grew up. From this place, his sense of community has grown to encompass the world.
When does a child learn values? Caring for the earth, caring for your place, caring for ohana, caring for your family, caring for elders. And when do you learn that? And for me, it was very young. And that was because my two greatest teachers were my mom and dad. Here is my primary school in my mom and dad's house. It sets the course for my life. And right down the road, right here is my grandfather's dairy, where he, I'm so old that, there were no supermarkets, no Costco, no Food Line, no nothing. There was nothing in Niu Valley. It was a dairy farm and a chicken farm. And Kuleo had a meat house. Hawaii Kai Marina was the largest fish pond in the state of Hawaii. And Aina had a few stores. And my grandfather made milk, and it would be delivered in glass bottles at night. And the guy that would deliver it his name was Yoshi Kawano, and he was the man that taught me kindness. He was the man that taught me compassion. He lived in an old wooden house, and inside his house, my mom and dad, when they would leave us with someone, we would always be with the Kawanos, and because they were the ones that they trusted the most. And you felt that, as a child. You were taken care of. You were nurtured, you were safe, and you were clean. And so in Yoshi's house, everything was Japanese. And so you bathed in the fudo, and you ate Japanese food. You could smell it in the house. You ate in futons, and everything was Japanese. But he was my greatest ocean teacher, my primary ocean teacher, because when I was about 5 years old, he gave me a fishing pole. Too bad for him to do that, because he gave me this little bamboo fishing pole, and then he was the one who delivered the milk at 10:30 at night, worked all night till 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be sitting in his old wooden doorsteps with the fishing pole, and then he put me in the car every single time and would drive, would seem very far to me, to Maunalua Bay, right out here, and we would go fishing, and that's when my love for the ocean started, through fishing, and because Maunalua was so full of life. And so that was classroom, that was school, and Yoshi became my definition of community that was caring. that kept you safe. We were safe as children here, and we could be left here on the land or with the community. It was a beautiful time. And Yoshi, in his house, everything was Japanese, and it was fully respected. He's Nisei, so he was born in Hawaii. But everything outside of his house, once you stepped out the door, was Hawaiian. And so this whole valley here, Kupa'o, this ridge, Kulepe'amoa, this is where he talked to me about the spirits and the blue lights. He talked about the Menehune when Kalaniana Olehe was a coral road. And that beautiful blending and mixing of who he was, of Japanese ancestry, but on the place that's Hawaiian. And honoring both sides. It was hugely impactful on how I look at our amazingly beautiful mixing of many cultures around the world that created a fabric of a culture that is more based not on race, but it's based on values. And that makes Hawaii powerful, not just a nice place to be, but it makes it powerful.
In addition to Yoshi Kawano, the teachers whom Nainoa Thompson most often recognizes are Maupiailug, one of the last traditional navigators from Micronesia, Nainoa's father, Pinky Thompson, Lacey Veach, an astronaut from Hawaii, and Eddie Aikau. Eddie was an outstanding waterman and crew member on Hokulea and was lost at sea when he went for help on his surfboard after the canoe capsized in 1978. When that happened, the dream of a Hawaiian navigating a canoe voyage to Tahiti could have ended.
My dad was saying that, you guys, your community, you need to find Tahiti. Not for you, but for your people. And so he was so forceful. You need to get up. You get off your knees. You're on your knees and you can't see. You need to get up, and you need to find Tahiti. But with me, he said, interesting, he pulled us all together, all our leadership. We weren't, after the loss of Eddie, we couldn't even talk to each other. We were just so overwhelmed with grief and anger and rage and denial, all that kind of stuff, and then blaming. Then that's the worst. And so it was all of that, and so we couldn't even talk to each other. Leadership was power. It was finished. But my father and guys like Abraham P. Anaya said, absolutely not. I mean, these guys have been through the war, right? They know what it takes to stand up and fight for your beliefs. So, and they knew it was a pivotal time. And so, but my dad was interesting. He said, so he gets us all together. He pulls us all together. He creates the idea of finding Tahiti. We all come together around the idea in one room at the biomedical building, and so we were together. And then we walk in the parking lot after meeting. We're all solid. The vision's clear. We're going to go. We're going to work hard. We're going to take years to do this. Do it right, not wrong. But almost in an angry voice in the parking lot area. The light was so bright because we were in a dark room the whole time. And he goes, "Okay, Nainoa, you want to navigate? Who's your teacher?" Because Ma went home, yeah.
And he said, you won't look for me and you won't even find me.
And you're not going to come back, yeah. So he was just so, frankly, disgusted with Hawaii because Hawaii was just not together. It wasn't pono, and it was in conflict all the time. And in the world he comes from, that is completely unacceptable. Anyway, make a long story short, Mao came back.
After Maupiailug returned to Hawaii, Nainoa Thompson trained with him for the next 2 years, learning the paths of the stars and the movements of the winds and seas, and sailed to Tahiti. Over the next 2 decades, Nainoa would take the canoe over enormous expanses of ocean. Throughout the Pacific, he became regarded as a wayfinder on land as well as at sea. In the year 2000, he was appointed by the Hawaii Probate Court to serve as a Bishop Estate trustee. This after a scandal over gross mismanagement that had placed the future of Kamehameha schools in jeopardy. Do you know how he found his way in these uncharted waters? This is the story.
I never applied for the leadership job. I mean, actually, I don't even know how it happened, but the agreement to become a trustee was really about service. It was really about if you're going to be asked, it's certainly it's honor and privilege to be a part of that amazing institution, and it is. It's just so extraordinary. But it was a rough time. I mean, I remember it was the first month of being a trustee, and you walk in the door with 4 of your colleagues you don't even know. I mean, we come from very different worlds. Why they picked me, I have no idea. But I'm not in the business field. I'm not an attorney. I'm not in real estate development. I'm a fisherman. So in the back of my mind, the thing we had to do 2 things. The primary thing, you need to rebuild trust in trustees, because it was gone. It was evaporated. Nobody trusted the trustees. And the only way that you're going to do that is to have that community of 5 trustees come together. And if we fail to come together, we should quit and have the courage to do it. So, making a long story short, in the first month, I don't know, it was a very few meetings. I remember, it's like where our office is, you walk around, go through a small little kitchen into the boardroom. And that boardroom is so much mana. And it's like a brass golden doorknob. And I reached for the doorknob, I grabbed it, and then I pulled my hand away because I was like afraid to go in the room. And because I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to lead this. I didn't know how to command. And then I took a really deep breath, and I opened the door, walked into the room filled with people. They don't trust you. And then working with a group that you don't know. It was a rough time. And then to really be able to collect and glue back the pieces of a broken trust. It was a rough time. And I didn't feel I was adequate. I didn't feel like I had the tools. I didn't have the background. But you were asked, right? You were asked to do this. And so I remember my response to that was I got my assistant, Stella Kutaka, a beautiful lady, to help me. And I got pictures of all my great leaders, all my great teachers, those who I would define as leaders that navigated. So you had Yoshi on the wall, you had my father on the wall, you had Lacey on the wall, you had Eddie on the wall, you had Kalakukea on the wall, you had Herb Kane, you had all these, and it was like 60-something pictures, and I put them around the whole room. And so when I would be in a decision that was profound to a whole institution that's on the governance side, that's my job, to set course for the institution, and I didn't know how to answer it, and I'm getting pressured for the wrong reasons, and you feel it, I would stop the meeting. And I'd go inside the room, turn on the light, and I would sit with my teachers, my leaders that have set the course for me for my whole life, and I needed them because the vast majority of them were gone. And so in the pictures were their story, their work, their values, and their relationship. So again, that is that community was around the whole room.
And are you saying that after spending time with the photos, that you were able to find a course?
Yeah. Well, sometimes the course, but the ability to be able to say, you got to get up, you got to go in that room, and you got to make a decision. Even if you're not completely clear, too bad. You're a trustee, and you need to decide. You can't go absent. And so I needed their counsel and their guidance, and so I would remember their stories. You know, what would Mao do? What would Eddie do? What would my dad do? My dad was a trustee for 21 years. What would he do? And so that was the smartest thing I ever did, was to get all my teachers and my leaders in the room with me, and I could sit with them in council by myself. Then go back inside and deal with the rough decisions that you're never ever feeling that it's 100% the correct thing to do, because it's complex decisions. And then working on I always say this all humility, but huge respect for my colleagues. That was an amazing group of trustees. Diane Plotz, who's a land developer that built all these big hotels with Chris Hemmeter, which is not my thing that I would ever do. I thought we are going to have a rough time coming to find a place of common ground. But Diane was, in the end, she was really almost the spiritual grounding of the board, because she had such solid values that she went back to. And when I go pester her and ask her, where do you come up with these decisions? It always went back to her growing up on a farm.
And having a center.
Where are values taught? Where do you learn them? How? When? Who? It was so Diane in the end was really my guidance at the level in which, you know, she'd look at me in the boardroom and say, Nainoa, vote. And she, but no matter what position I ever took, even though it was contrary to her, she respected it. I love that lady.
And no Hawaiian blood in her at all.
No Hawaiian blood, but she is of the culture of values. She's one of the navigators. If there was some way to accurately measure Kamehameha's influence on what's happened in the last 40 years, it would be profound. Look around in the professional fields and how many are graduates. And the interesting thing about Kamehameha is that the graduates come home. You know, there's a sense of place, there's a sense of kuleana, and they're making a huge difference. And if you think the last 40 years is amazing, wait till the next 40. And I mean, they're just everywhere. On our voyaging canoes, out of the 12 navigators that we have, 8 of Kamehameha School's graduates. The new ones, the young ones, the best ones. I mean, and so, their influence on voyaging is huge.
Nainoa Thompson says that as new generations of voyagers have been raised up over the years, so has their desire to undertake new challenges and achieve new goals.
Lacey Beach back in 1992, him and my dad, right down the road, was saying, you know, he's telling my dad, and my dad was agreeing, you should take Hokulea around the world. The world needs to see Hokulea. Hokulea needs to learn about the earth. We need to protect it. This is Lacey. And my dad was raising the question, are we at the point where the Hawaiian community is ready to engage the rest of the earth as a vibrant, strong, powerful culture and build relationships around the right kinds of values? That's in 1992. We lose both of our great navigators, my father and Lacey. But it wasn't until 2007 when we were, not me, it was Chad Paishan and Chad Babayan were sitting exhausted on the Fukuoka dock in Japan, where we sailed to Micronesia, to Miles Island to honor him. Then we went up to Japan to honor Yoshi and the many Yoshis that had voyaged to Hawaii. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. These 2 pole navigators are exhausted, and they're saying, man, there are going to be 2,000 people down here tomorrow morning at dawn, and they're going to want to touch Hokulea. So you're in a country that doesn't know Hokulea. You're in a country that speaks a different language, a different history. They are oceanic people. They're amazing ocean people. But they don't know this canoe, and yet why would 2,000 people be there? And they're going to be there. And then they said, why don't we go around the world? And so we voted on April 1st, 2008 to do this. But there were a whole bunch of issues. Could you keep it safe? Could you get enough crew members to do this? Could you raise the funding? Could you build the community? And so that was when we reached out to stuff like organizations that were just designed for this, and that was the East-West Center. I mean, they were designed for this, and to help us create the ability to say the voyage, because we needed to earn the voyage, right? We needed to make sure that, all these issues, safety and leadership and crew strength, and that was born from the idea, but we had to be responsible for the ideas.
And there's so many moving parts, like even fundraising and strategic planning.
Hokulea took 18 months of dry dock. We made the promise that the canoe needs to be better than ever, that it can go around the world. We're going to take all rot and all damage off the canoe. Right now, the only thing left on Hokulea that's from 1976 is 1 inch of the hulls that go around the whole house. And everything else, by that decision, had to be changed. But the thing about community, we had 1,200 volunteers that put in 32,000 volunteer man hours. That would not happen if we didn't have that pool. We could never get Hokulea ready to go. But fundamentally, these are about 1,200 people that don't know each other, that come together around an idea, and to get Hokulea ready. And enormous human effort. You don't lead that. Either the idea. You know what leads it? It's the idea.
But the idea has to be shaped and nourished and grown. At what point do you come in and feed it?
Yeah, I come in the beginning. I'm there to be responsible for the nurturing of the idea and to measure it. I guess my biggest leadership decision is whether we did earn the right to go. And during the voyage, I have the very difficult situation about saying whether it's still worth it. Are you going to call it off? Are you going to ship Hokulea home? Are you going to fail the mission? That would be my responsibility. And so I do have to make that final call. But what I've learned over the years, and it's through those great teachers, is that fear is best friend. It's the one that reminds you that you're not ready. It's the one that keeps you honest and tells you that the things you didn't take care of. And fear, I find it in a number of ways, but I find it in my dreams. And I will wake up and just have these horrendous dreams of irresponsibility, not following through, danger, risk. The things that are really bothering me, they come to me in my, because what you do is your days are so busy and it's so complicated that you can push this all behind you. But when you're sleeping, you can't do that. But then I also find it in exhaustion. I get sick sometimes. I get more colds. I start to create that old kind of childhood excuses for not having to take responsibility. It never goes away. It's still there. But what the voyaging's helped me do, which has been huge, it's like there's this door of fear that it's like the Kamehameha School's door. It's like that golden handle that you don't want to open. Because if you open it, you got to be honest about all your inadequacies, all the things that make you less than perfect. But what I've learned through the voyaging, that's why I love cloudy days. I love getting lost now. And I love taking my students. I hope they get like the worst doldrums ever. Because it's in the blackness, it's in the cloudiness, it's in the times that aren't easy that you grow, that you become the best. And what I've learned, and primarily from my primary teacher, really was Eddie. That Eddie said, open the door.
When Hokulea was rebuilt, the original deck was salvaged and remade into this table that sits on the lanai of Nainoa Thompson's parents' house in Niu Valley in East Honolulu. In May 2014, Hokulea left for Tahiti, the first stop outside Hawaii on the Malama Honua worldwide voyage, a journey dedicated to increasing awareness about the importance of taking care of our island Earth. Everywhere Hokulea travels, the canoe is joining with global communities to bridge traditional and new technologies to share the message of living sustainably.
The oceans matter. So the Worldwide Voyage says that the greatest environmental challenge of our time is protecting the world's oceans, because the oceans protect world's life. I mean, the next 4 breaths you take, 3 come from the ocean. Don't mess with plankton. And so when we look at the oceans and we look at the state they're in, we need to be very concerned, because that's going to be the measurable, defined environmental issue about what's going to happen to our next 2 generations. So if that's our story, if that's our idea, then you make the connection with places that don't know the canoe, but they connect to your values. So when we look at sustainability, we talk about stuff that's not really the solution, but when you think about what the Hawaiians did in this land with their system, the tenure, their sets of values, how they developed things like the ahupuaa system, and how they learned how to manage resources on islands, it's so critical today, because embedded in that 2,000 years was an enormous amount of very hard learning that took place to be able to find some sense of balance, and in the balance is where we find hope. And so you have all these things emerging. You have leadership emerging, you have highly educated Native Hawaiians coming into the workforce, coming into the professionalism, name it, go into medicine, go into the doctorate programs, go into economics, go into education. It's growing. What's going to happen in the next 20 years, there's going to be this merger between that that history, that culture of living well on these islands is going to, and with the professionalism that's required to make the adaptation for that, the way that we lived before, we'll figure out a way for the next part of the second half of this 21st century. I think it's vital, and it's you know, of course it's hard.
Since he attained the rare distinction of Master Navigator, Nainoa Thompson's courage to open the door and walk through has been inspiring communities, not just in Hawaii, but around the world, to achieve their dreams. Mahalo to Nainoa Thompson of Ahupuaa o Niu for your community building on a vast scale and for sharing your stories with us. And thank you for joining us. For PBS Hawaii and Long Story Short, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Aloha hui hou.
For audio and written transcripts of all episodes of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, visit pbshawaii.org. To download free podcasts of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, go to the Apple iTunes Store or visit pbshawaii.org.
All you're doing is listening to your great leaders. What about the children who are now saying, and other people who are saying, I'm listening to my great leader, and that's Nainoa?
I don't know about that. But the ones I listen to the most today are my two little children. That when I add up the science and what we know about traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge about what's going on, when I know that my two little children understand the worldwide voyage and the values and the beliefs in the context of their 6-year-old world, when I know that they allow their father to go because they know that he believes it's the right thing to do, but at the same time that this voyage is for them. At the same time, I don't have to have their picture on the wall because I can see them on a daily basis. I can touch them and feel them. So it's that beautiful world that I live in that has this legacy and this journey and this history of extraordinary leaders that are defining your ultimate permission, and then at the same time you can be at home and see your children and making sure that they are believing with you too. So I'm not a leader, but I'm in an amazing place and been in a lifelong journey of extraordinary leaders, and that's that.